Okay, we're back for The Lifters by Dave Eggers. We're going to read chapter 11. We left off with his sister throwing up. Maisie threw up more than the average person, more so certainly than anyone else in the Flower Petal family. She threw up in cars, on swings, and always when Gran's father tossed her around. But still, she loved to be lifted and swung. The throwing up was just part of it, the part where it was time to stop playing and clean up. "I'll get the mop," Gran said. The Flower Petals always did something unusual when it was time to clean up. They did it together. Gran couldn't place when this started, but as far back as he could remember, they had been cleaning up Maisie's vomit together. The job got done faster that way and was actually kind of fun. "What do I see here?" Gran's father said, examining the pink and green puddle on the floor. "Looks like spinach and pears and gummy bears. Wait, did I just write a poem?" They all laughed, and the job was done in minutes. All that was left was to open the windows and light a candle. Maisie always opened the window. Gran's mother usually lit the candle. Gran's job was to take the garbage, now containing Maisie's latest output, outside. "Oh, first vomit in the new house," Gran's father said when Gran returned. "Now it's officially a home," Gran's mother said. Maisie loved the attention. She wasn't embarrassed at all. When the Flower Petals had lived near the ocean, their apartment had 4 rooms: the living room, the kitchen, which really was just an extension of the living room, the bathroom, and the bedroom, which they all shared. And because the apartment was small, they had all participated in just about everything happening inside. If Gran's mother or father was cooking, they all helped in some way. If someone started cleaning the apartment, everyone joined in. It was hard to avoid. There was nowhere to hide. This new house, with 2 stories and 7 rooms, was cavernous by comparison, but there was still work to do. Gran's father had begun building a ramp for Gran's mother from the front door to the driveway. The incline was not so bad as it was. She could manage, but he wanted it to be easier. There was also the matter of the sinks and the counters. They had to be lowered, and then the cabinets underneath had to be removed, otherwise Gran's mother had nowhere to put her legs. "Let's start with the bathroom," he said. Chapter 12. But there is a sadness that courses through a house where money is uncertain. From the bedroom he shared with his sister after she was asleep, all that first week and the next, Gran would hear his parents talk quietly about money. His father did not have a job like some jobs, where an adult is paid a salary, steadily, dependably. Instead, Gran's father was paid each afternoon for the work he did that day, and he was not sure whether or not he would get to work the next. From what Gran could gather, his father had been told that Carousel needed a mechanic, but when they arrived, after moving 1,000 miles, he was told the local auto shop didn't have much work after all. People were giving up their cars and trucks. Gran remembered seeing a grown man riding a boy's dirt bike. There wasn't enough money in the town to pay for repairs to old vehicles, let alone buy new ones. When Gran's father did not get work, he was at home when Gran got home from school, and the nights were long. His parents' murmuring sometimes turned to hissing, and sometimes fell to yelling. On days when their voices became loud, Gran would look to Maisie, sleeping across from him, and wonder if she could hear what he heard. She never did wake up, but she turned left and right and kicked the covers from her, as if wanting to get free. Then one morning, Gran's father's car was gone. "He went looking for work," his mother said. "He heard about something a few hundred miles south." "So why are we here?" Maisie asked. "He'll be back this weekend," Gran's mother said. "Get your jackets on. It's supposed to be colder today." Chapter 13. Every morning Gran and Maisie walked up the hill, past the Burgundy house where they heard the 2 women arguing over the issues presented on their lawn signs. Gran and Maisie walked past the twin dogs and their exasperation with the bickering, past Dr. Walter Wolford, who was against Propositions P and S and for Propositions M and H, and past Phyllis Feely, who was for Propositions P and S and against Propositions M and H. Every day Gran saw the same man riding the dirt bike, followed by the same sullen pit bull whose fur was the color of mud. Gran would drop Maisie off at her elementary school and continue on to his own school, the purple and gray one slanting from the ridge where no one knew his name. Or rather, they knew but didn't care. It was the Monday of the 3rd week when his name was first spoken by a teacher. Until then, they had preferred not to do roll call, so Gran had simply shown up, and because he never raised his hand in class, he was never called on, and his name was never uttered. Until this certain Monday, 3 weeks in. It was then that Mrs. Rhapsod, his homeroom teacher, made an announcement. "It's come to my attention that some of you have nicknames you would like to use," she said. "Greta Rose Nagel informed me today she wants to be called Greta R.N., for example. So if there's anyone else who wishes to amend or shorten their name, let me know. I'm not especially patient when it comes to such things. Once I put your nickname or whatever it is down in this attendance form, that will be it, period. I'll send the change to all your other teachers, and that will be that. No going back." This was the moment Gran had been waiting for, but it was very different than what he had envisioned. He had not expected it to be so public and so final. "Anna Applegate," Miss Rhapsod said. "No change?" Anna shook her head. "Nathan Delacroix," she said. "You want to be Nat or Nathan D., something like that?" "No, thanks," Nathan said. Gran knew his name was coming up. Flower Petal was dangerously close to Delacroix, and even closer to Esterhaus and Estrada. His shoulders tensed as those students' names were called. "Granite Flower Petal?" Miss Rhapsod said. Saying his name, her neck snapped back as if she had just smelled something rotten. There were a few snickers and scoffs. "Stop," she said, and the snickering and scoffing ended. She looked at Gran as if seeing him for the first time. "Where do you come from? Have you been in this class all year?" "Yes, sir, ma'am," Gran said. Most of it." For a moment she seemed almost apologetic. Then she returned to her business-like manner. "Name change for you, Granite Flower Petal?" Gran's skin burned and his heart rattled. "Back at my old school they called me Gran," he managed. "Okay, Gran it is," Miss Rhapsod said, and she made a note on her attendance sheet. Chapter 14. After the nickname session, no one said anything to Gran for the rest of the period. In the hallway after class, no one made jokes, no one seemed to be gossiping about him. The bell rang, and when he sat down for his first period class, he seemed again to be invisible. A state of being which, for the time being, he welcomed. It wasn't until midway through the second period, health class, that he found the note in his textbook. It was on a standard piece of notebook paper folded in half. The handwriting was small and precise, and rendered in black. He was no handwriting expert, but he knew that most of the boys in his class had crazy, jagged handwriting, while the girls' writing was loopy and precise. This note was of the second variety. "Dear Granite/Gran, I understand why you would want to change your name from Granite, but why change it to Gran? Don't you realize Gran sounds like you're a grandmother? A 12-year-old boy shouldn't be called the same thing I call my grandmother, which is Gran. Question of the day, why didn't you just change your name to Grant? That's a real name. Signed, your classmate." Gran's face tingled. His stomach tied itself into braids. He looked around, suddenly sure that the writer of the note was close by watching him, but no one was looking at him. He turned back to the note, read it again, and he knew it was correct. He hadn't thought of the best situation to the problem, Grant. Of course, Grant would have worked far better than Gran, and now he had to live with Gran in every class the rest of the year. There would be more snickering, more scoffing, probably more pointing, staring, laughing, and ridicule. And there's a picture to go with. So let's see if you can see that. There he is in his classroom. One more short chapter. 2 more short chapters. Chapter 15. But none of that happened. No one said anything the rest of the day. The next day, Miss Rhapsod went back to her usual way of not calling attendance, and the rest of the teachers, who never called attendance in the first place, continued in the usual way. Even the students who had snickered and scoffed the first time they heard the name Granite Flower Petal seemed to have forgotten about Gran's full name, and his nickname, too. They never scoffed again, they never snickered. In fact, they never noticed him, never looked at him. No one did. No one spoke to him, which led Gran to wonder if he was, in fact, real. How can a person be real when 412 other people, his fellow students, could not see him? The days went on, and finally Gran, at the end of his first month in Carousel, walked out of the school and into the bright morning, and was so overcome with the idea he might not be real, he thought he might be able to walk through walls. How could he be so sure he couldn't walk through a wall? He had never tried it, so he walked around the side of the school to a spot where he thought he was alone and unseen. Then he squared his shoulders and walked 3 quick, steady steps toward the building. When most people would have stopped, he continued. Kind of reminds me of Harry Potter in Platform 9 3/4. Wonder what'll happen. Chapter 16. The pain of bricks against one's head cannot be overstated. Given that bricks are quite solid, walking into them truly hurts. Anyone who has walked into a structure made of this material, bricks, will tell you this. Gran was on the ground holding his head, feeling the slippery blood on his hands, when he heard a voice. You just walked into a building. It was a girl's voice. Gran lifted his head, and through his blood-matted hair he saw it was a dark-eyed girl from his third-period history class. He remembered her name because next to him she was the shortest person in the class, just a hair taller than Gran. And every day she wore the same thing, heavy brown boots, usually dirty, jeans, a t-shirt, always bearing the face of an older woman with glasses and her hair in a bun, and a flannel shirt tied around her waist. Gran had wondered who the old woman on her shirt was. She looked familiar. But he did know who the girl wearing this shirt was. Her name was Catalina. Catalina Catalan. And there's a picture of Gran and Catalina. And that's where we're going to stop today with an important new character. Hope you're enjoying the book.